Great. Well, thank you everybody for coming along today. It's been quite fun actually preparing the presentation, and today I will be talking to you about the music program that we have here, and a little bit about the course, a little bit about the opportunities that we offer. There's also a student here, a current student of Ashbourne, David Balliker, who's in on the call. So from time to time, I'm going to ask David if he can chip in. Thank you, David. That's excellent. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the course, and this is really just an overview of what students need to do in order to complete the A-level. So there's the first thing I'll talk about a bit is Unit 1, the appraising music, which is the written exam. The bulk of the classroom time is given over to preparing for this exam. Obviously, it's worth 40% of the course, so it's quite a wide-ranging unit. And students have to learn quite a variety of skills to do well in this unit. So it combines both writing, analysis, and listening skills, all of which we cover in class time. So some of that we do through bits of ear training, dictation, and rhythm writing. We also do quite a lot of intensive work on the written style. The writing style for Music A-level, I would say, is very technical, and it relies heavily on examples taken from the music that we're studying, or the musical styles that we cover. And you'll see the list of those pieces. Western classical music, we do 3 areas of study there. So we do a section on Baroque concertos and on Mozart's opera, The Marriage of Figaro, and then we spend a little bit of time looking at 19th century piano music, but our main focus is on Baroque concertos and on The Marriage of Figaro. The way that the exam breaks down is it's out of 120 marks. 54 of those are available for Western classical music, and then the remaining 66 share between jazz and music for media. And students have a bit of choice in the exam itself as to how they address that. There's an extended essay as well, which they'll write one extended essay in the exam on either jazz or music for media. And there we look at a number of named artists, including Duke Ellington, Charlie Parker, and Miles Davis, and a couple of others. And then music for media, we're looking quite a lot of detail at the music of Hans Zimmer and Michael Giacchino and Thomas Newman. So that's the appraising unit. As I say, it's quite a big exam, and it takes quite a lot of preparation time in class. And the next unit by size is the performing unit, and that's worth 35%. In fact, all students should be at grade 7 by September of their year 13 year. And this really comes from the board, AQA. They say that really the level, in order to be eligible for the maximum marks, students have to be performing at grade 7 or above. And a lot of our students, I'd say all of our students, are really at round about that level by the time they come into year 13. A number of students have been considerably above that as well, and those whose grades are in the high 90s or even 100%, they've been certainly above that level, and pushing higher, even higher as well. In some cases, students who want to go on and pursue performing as their career, then they're going to be at a higher level than grade 8 by the time they start in year 13. But as I say, grade 7 is the benchmark, and that's the standard that we would normally expect. The performance unit, all students must record a 12-minute program of pieces, and this, ideally, we want this program to show quite a wide range of pieces. I think, David, your program this year, there was some Khachaturian and there was some Bach. Yeah. And what else was it you performed in your program this year?
Yes, so besides the Bach and the Khachaturian, I also did by Rachmaninoff, the Prelude in C sharp minor, which I thought was a very nice generic contrast as well, because in the genre, so we have a more romantic, the more later style of Rachmaninoff pitted against the Soviet style of Khachaturian, and I think there's a contrast there as well, and also in the way that the artists were brought up. So I really tried to make that work, and I also included Traumerei by Schumann.
Yeah. So I think it's quite. I think that sort of gives you a bit of a flavour of the kind of program that we encourage students to perform. I think we had other students this year performing some Chopin and some Brahms. So this is three. We had three pianists this year. Not always the case, but that's how it was this year. And we had a couple of other students as well. Then the last unit, composition. This is 25% of the course, and that breaks down into two tasks. The first is composition to a brief. Now, in most cases, this is chorale writing, although where it's clear that a student is going to score higher with a different option, the board publishes 7 different briefs every year. Then where it's clear that a student is going to score higher in another option, then we'll obviously choose that. And then the second part of the composing unit is a free composition. And David and I will talk a little bit about that in just a minute. That's a composition in any style, but it's don't let the title fool you. It's not a complete free for all. So I want to talk a little bit about performing at Ashbourne. Over the last few years, we've been working very hard, and we've built up, I think, a very nice program of concerts and public events that run through the year. So the first is we have regular concerts at St Mary Abbott's Church, and I was checking on Google Maps earlier today, and Google Maps says it is a 3-minute walk. I think it's a 2-minute walk in the rain. We've now got a very warm relationship with the church there. They're very happy for us to use the space for concerts, which we've been doing once a term. These concerts are all recorded, and in fact, we also in our March concert, we've also started using this as a venue for recording students' pieces for their performance unit. So those concerts really play a very important role in both showcasing the talents that our students have, but also helping students really prepare as best they can for that performance unit. We also have the review, which happens every year in December. And our jazz band, you saw a little bit of the jazz band up on the first slide there. One of our saxophonists from a couple of years ago, I think it was last year. So the jazz band plays regularly in the review, and a lot of that is supporting singers who are singing musical theatre or jazz numbers or pop numbers. A creative arts event, which also is very similar. From a musical point of view, lots of some background music and lots of supporting singers. So lots of jazz standards, a bit of Stephen Sondheim, a little bit of Wicked occasionally. That kind of music, and then also we have a few other public events, including open evenings. I think, David, you've been one of our regular contributors to open evenings as well. Is there anything else?
My pleasure. It has been my pleasure.
It's been your pleasure. Oh, wonderful! Yes. So I think that's something that's we've been consistently building up. This year had we not ended up in this very strange situation that we're all in now, we would probably have had a third concert this term because we've had more musicians coming in, and so we've got more students who are putting pieces in. So we're really looking to expand those concerts at St Mary Abbott's, and the church have been, as I say, the very accommodating, and that relationship has been working very well. So the next thing I want to talk to, this is the third unit. I want to talk about composition, and you can see that picture of my back there. So this is actually from our first concert at the Warehouse with a group you can see there. It's called the Edison Ensemble. And we've actually, on some occasions, we've even had a student there. That's a former Ashbourne student there, a lady called Verena Coy. She's now in her 3rd year studying violin at Royal Conservatoire Birmingham. She was playing there with the ensemble, and this is something where we have a group of professional players who come in, and they come in on 2 days. So the first day they come in, and we'll have a first look at student pieces which are written for this ensemble, which you can see is violin, flute, clarinet, cello, and piano, and we'll see how the pieces are working, if there are any problems, if anything can be made to sound a bit better, a bit tighter, anything that we need to change before doing a public performance. And then we take the pieces to the Warehouse, which is a very nice concert space near Waterloo Station in South London. So as I say, composition breaks down into these 2 areas: composition to a brief and free compositions. Now, free compositions, these are in any style. But as I said, do not be fooled by the name. That it has to be technically quite sophisticated. And David is here to tell us a little bit about that process from a student's point of view. So I'm going to hand you over to David to talk a little bit about that process of composing a piece for this ensemble. So do you want to take it away for us?
Of course. So yeah, carrying on from what Piers was saying, coming out of GCSEs and into the course, I was I would say that my understanding of genres was not as definitely not as substantial as it is now, and in a way I had all of these concepts and ideas that from a composition point of view I wanted to present and to show, but I couldn't quite get my head around as to how to do it and to how to exemplify everything that I had in my vision. And I think, you know, the course at Ashbourne has really helped me from a technical point of view to show that and to learn about so many new genres that I can experiment with in my compositions. For example, when I began the course, and this was the first composition that I did, and the one that was performed by the Edison Ensemble in the February concert last year, so February 2019. That one was a classical sonatina, and it was composed from a very classical veneer, I would say, because that was my comfort zone at that time. It was I had a clear structure set in my head. I kind of tried to do something like that at GCSE, so I had the concept there, and so I had a clear pathway to it. But by let's say by September last year, as I progressed through the course, my vision became much clearer, and I could incorporate new genres such as romanticism or even spectralism. When I was doing the application from the conservatoire and for Trinity Laban, I was really in my portfolio. I talked a lot about spectralism and how I've really become attached to it as a genre, and I want to take it further. You know, and these types of exploration with different styles and different veneers, I didn't have when I started the course, but now I've gone on this journey of progression, let's say, within my array of skill.
Thank you, David, very much. Can I just ask you one quick question, David? Sure. If you're talking to a number of people here, some of whom may be quite experienced with composition, others who may be feeling a little bit nervous and thinking, well, I did this at GCSE and I'm still not quite sure how to go about composing. If you turn your mind back 18 months, what would you want to tell yourself 18 months ago that you know now about that process of composing, whether it's a technical thing or whether it's an emotional thing? What would you want to say to David 18 months ago?
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. There are many things. For example, I would really have wished that I'd have been more open to trying out new sounds and new progressions right from the very beginning, because I feel like the time to become adventurous is in the initial stages, and then, you know, that is the job of a mentor, of a teacher, to then, you know, instruct you to do it correctly, you know. And so there's always you can always be pulled back if you do something adventurous but it doesn't quite work out the way it's intended to. You can always be pulled back from that, but it's very important to try new things and to trust your instinct. I think trust your gut instinct when you have an idea of a melody, or when you have an idea of notes that you want to include. Go for it, and then it's passed on to the teacher to review if what you've done has met its purpose or what you wanted to achieve.
Fantastic, thank you very much indeed, David. I'm sure there may be some questions in a minute as well.
Of course.
We've got a little bit of time. The last thing I want to talk about is, aside from the course units, is just a little bit of a look at what students have been doing. Now, obviously, not all students who come to do Music A-Level want to pursue music as a career. I think most will choose it as a third or sometimes a fourth subject because they've already worked quite hard as performers, and they may well have done their grade 8 or their grade 7 a year or so before coming to the college, and so they feel, well, I've done all this work, I can now cash some of that in, particularly in the performance unit of the A level. But some will want, so they may go off and do, and you've had students go off and do literature, do medicine, and obviously that's absolutely fantastic. I'm particularly happy about this. Increasingly, there are more students coming to us who are pursuing music at degree level, and we're starting to build up. We're still quite a young department. We're only about 5 or 6 years old, but we've been sending students to Russell Group universities and to some of the country's leading conservatoires. So that's something which is gradually gaining a bit of momentum. This has been quite, certainly the choices are quite varied. I think a number of students have gone on to university, and that obviously offers quite a broad academic degree with some emphasis on performance and some composition. Or we've got some students, David, you heard David mention he's going off to Trinity Laban in September. I mentioned Verena Coy, she's at Royal Conservatoire Birmingham at the moment. We've also sent students on to places like Bristol, Royal Holloway, and Manchester, and I think that's something which I would really, anyone who wants to take music further to a degree level, then Music A level is a fantastic lead into that, and I think it really provides quite a broad foundation of the subject. I think that stylistically, it's much broader now than it was certainly even when I was doing my A levels. But I think the technical demands of the subject are still at the right kind of level that students can then take the subject much further, and they can have a really detailed knowledge of the pieces that they've been studying. I think I just also pick up on one of those things that David was saying. You try, when you come to do Music A level, try things out. And I'm always reminded then of when I was doing my degree, what I was hearing from people who are older than me was, when you're in your first year at university, you can try out so many things, and they won't all work, but that's okay, because you'll find out what doesn't work and what does, and then you take it further. But do that at A level as well, and I think Ashbourne is a fantastic place to do that, precisely because we've got this, because we are that little bit between school and university. And so you do have that flexibility and that independence where you can try out some new things. And so year 12, in that sense, is a really good opportunity to try out things that you wish you could have done a year ago, or well, gosh, I'd love to write some music for dance, or I'd love to write some music for film, or I'd love to play some Schumann, or I'd love to play some music by a living composer, or I want to play music by my friends, or I want to arrange some Bruno Mars for a jazz band. These are all things which have happened while we've been at Ashbourne. In fact, we've had one student go off, and she's now producing musicals in the West End, which is wonderful. I think even in these times of COVID-19, she's doing that. Wow. So I would really encourage. I really encourage anyone who wants to try things out and then see what works and what you want to take further. And I think that takes us about to the end. We're sort of at the time for questions. I was just wondering, Chris, have there been any questions in the chat, or is anything coming up?
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Piers and David. That was great. We do have one question in the chat here. This is a question from Oscar. He's asking about applying to Cambridge for music. I don't know if you can sort of shed any light on the application process there.
I think, well, applying to, I think Oxbridge is something that Ashbourne supports very well, and I think that it's certainly something that you would do with the help of Will Stockland and Christopher Masters, who both oversee, and that's something where you'd go to them probably during the spring term in year 12, and you'd say, look, I'm thinking, or perhaps even earlier if you wanted, and say, look, I'd really like to go to Oxbridge. Is there any pointers you can give me? I think in terms of they will certainly help you with things like which colleges are appropriate. Cambridge obviously has a very academic degree program there, and it's to a very high level. I think it's an excellent program. And I'd also say that alongside Music A level, doing things like grade 8 theory are very, very helpful. In fact, I would say grade 8 theory is something that I would really encourage you to consider, because it's a technical degree and you need to be very comfortable with harmonic analysis and things like trio sonata writing and things like figured bass, which they're all covered as part of that degree program. So I think if you're thinking about applying to Cambridge, then I would say start now, and I'd start looking at the ABRSM grade 8 theory syllabus, because that's something that goes down very, very well at application. I think the other thing, and this really goes for music applications in general, is be proactive, get involved. Because all admissions tutors, they want to see applications by students who are going to be turning up to rehearsals on time. They're going to be getting involved in concerts. They're probably going to be organising their own concerts, because music really, it only survives as long as we're playing it. And so it's essential that everyone who wants to do music at a high level, especially at an elite institution like Cambridge, that they are obviously well motivated. So you want to be doing performing in Ashbourne, but you want to be doing performing outside of that as well. You want to be working with friends. You want to be saying, I'm a violinist, so I'm going to find my friend who's a pianist, and we're going to have a look at a couple of Mozart sonatas. Or I've written this piece for, I've been having a look at pieces for solo violin, and I want to write my own set of pieces for solo violin, for example. I think really it's a very academic degree. So make sure that you're comfortable with all of the technical requirements that could come up there, but also be proactive and get involved. I think those would be the two things I would say at this stage.
Okay, thanks, Piers. They've actually got a follow-up question here about asking what they need to study. I imagine, you correct me if I'm wrong, please, Piers, but I imagine it's just music, A level, and then any other subject. Would that be right?
Yes, normally. I think that some colleges will accept grade 8 theory instead of music A level, but then the typical offer will usually be A star and 2 A's. So what I would encourage is that you do music A level and do grade 8 theory. So I'd really say you want to seriously consider doing your grade 8 theory before making the application. As I say, partly because of the technical demands, and also because they put it down as a possible substitute. But I think I would always recommend you go with both. I think the other things are read. Find people that you read. Bukowski's Music in the Baroque Era. That would be a fantastic place to start. Or if you want something a bit lighter, Howard Goodall's 5 Big Bangs. I think we recommend that on the Ashbourne website. But Bukowski would be brilliant as a very good history textbook. I think other things that you could look at, there's a very nice collection of essays and thoughts by Roger Scruton called Understanding Music, and that's a good place. I think that's got some very interesting things in there, and I think he also points the way to other things that you can start looking at, particularly his discussions of T.S. Eliot and Theodore Adorno, because that just starts getting you into the mindset of thinking about music in a very critical way and how it works culturally as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Piers. And just to clarify, yeah, I think the suggestion is to take A-level music. So if you're coming to Ashbourne and the aim is to study music at Cambridge, obviously take A-level music. And then we normally recommend students take 2 other A-levels, and that could be in basically any other subject. But obviously Piers is recommending that the students should also do grade 8 theory alongside that. Thank you, Piers, and thanks, Oscar, for those questions. I have a question here from Anna Piers. She's asking, do you welcome musicians from all genres for scholarships and curriculum? My son prefers rock, blues and jazz, although he's grade 6 Trinity for classical guitar. And how would that apply for A-levels?
That's a very good question. Thank you very much. I think that certainly, as in terms of a stylistic background, yes, we would look at all styles, and I think we've had a fairly broad range of styles represented in students over the last few years. I think that when it comes to jazz, I would say I'd go more towards the technical end, looking at people like Miles Davis and Charlie Parker as a model of how to do well at assessment. The music has to be technically demanding. And so I think that I think all of these things require a little bit of a little bit of characterization, just make sure things are a little bit sharper. But yes, I think certainly come and perform as a jazz musician. We've got good opportunities at Ashbourne for supporting that. But I think that there is something that you've got to be at least as well organized as anyone coming in who's going to be playing Bach and Schumann. There's no room for saying this is that anything is technically less demanding. So that's why I'd always recommend you go towards that technically demanding end of something like jazz, and look at performers like Charlie Parker or Gwilym Simcock as a more current example, who's a very virtuosic pianist. You have to make sure you satisfy those demands of technical sophistication and also breadth of expression as well. So I think it's yes, but make sure that the music you're performing and that you're involved with is going to be demanding music.
I can also add that in my year group as well. There were so many people were from or specialized in different music genres, as their base, their foundation. So yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, and thank you for that question, Anna. I hope that that answers things for you. Another question here from Rebecca. Rebecca's asking, I'm not taking GCSE music, but I'm doing grade 6 flute. Is it still possible to do A-level music? If yes, would I find it more difficult than other students who have done GCSE music?
Another very good question. I have in principle, I make no distinction between people who have done GCSE or not. That said, the GCSE is a very helpful preparation. So I think if you've not done GCSE music, then I'd be very interested in the other subjects that you're doing and how your writing is with those, particularly subjects like, say, English literature or history, where you've got some fairly technical essay writing skills that you need for those subjects. I think that if you've just done your was it grade 6 flute? I hope I got that right.
Yes.
I think that's a good position to be in. You definitely want to be looking at doing grade 7 and maybe grade 8 in the next 18 months or so. And I'd set that as a goal. If you've done grade 6, then I think you've done grade 5 theory, which is also very good. In terms of the theory demands at Music A level, grade 5 theory is really the entry point. And so although we do cover a lot of what's required, in fact we cover all of what's required for theory within the first half of term, and we go from the course starts with a semitone and we work our way up to a German sixth, usually within about over a month. So we have a very intensive theory course at the beginning of your time here. It still helps a great deal to have already done your grade 5 theory and already have that under your belt. So yeah, thank you very much. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks, Piers. And Rebecca, let us know if you've got any follow-up questions on that. I hope that answers things. Piers, I don't know if you could talk a little bit about, we were just speaking previously in the art webinar about the difference that art university applications have to sort of other subjects generally, and music is also an example of that. So I don't know if you could talk a little bit about applying to conservatoires, if that's what students are looking to pursue, and how it differs from sort of your standard subjects.
Yeah, so I'll talk very briefly about the university applications, and then I'll contrast that with conservatoire applications. To do music at university, there Russell Group University or Oxbridge, the application procedure is the same as any other subject, but in many cases you might be asked to perform on your first instrument as part of the interview process. So some universities will make offers without an interview. With music, it's more likely that you will have an interview and that you will have to play, and you will have a performance audition as part of that. So that's the UCAS side of things, and that's the university side. To consider them, I'll contrast that with the conservatoire application side, and we've had a number of students over the last few years, including this year, applying to UK conservatoires. Now these are they're excellent institutions. You might say, you could say, well, I'm biased because I went through that system, but I think they really are. I have a lot of love for the conservatoire system here, and I think that the application procedure there, though, is quite different to UCAS. The first thing is that applicants are responsible for their applications completely. So with UCAS, normally Ashbourne is able to look at a student's application as the student adds information, and as they add their personal statement, and as references are put into it, and so on. But with conservatoire applications, we don't have that, and it's only the candidate who has the account with the application service, which is called UCAS Conservatoires. And they are responsible for sending everything off. So there's a little bit more emphasis, a little bit more responsibility there. The other thing is that the deadline for conservatoires is very early. So it's the 1st of October in the year before you would start. So it's nearly 12 months before you would even set foot in the institution as a member. If you wanted to go to the Royal College of Music, you would be submitting your application there nearly 12 months before you would then be enrolled as a student. So it's a long, you're much earlier than everything else. So you have to get your application ready that much earlier in advance. There are other things.
Could I add something? So I just wanted to add something. What I'd heavily recommend is if you're looking to apply for conservatoire, I did my portfolio for composition, because if you're to go on composition, you present a portfolio to the conservatoires. I organized everything, or about 80% of it, in the summer holidays, because as Piers was saying, the deadline is October time. So yeah, I wanted to
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that, David. That's right. So it is a more involved application process. And I think it's also one where it's important that you do your research as well. And I think, and one thing that I always find myself recommending to students is consultation lessons as well. And it's very, very good. So if there's a conservatoire that you're interested in, then go and visit them. Go to an open day. And you speak to some of the tutors. A lot of them offer these consultation lessons as well, which are a private 1-hour lesson that you would arrange with a professor at one of the conservatoires, and you go for a lesson and see what they think of your work and see what you think of working with them. So I think it's certainly a very personalized way of studying. Classes are always very small. You will have some lectures at conservatoire, but most of the work takes place in groups of about 5 or 6. And depending on what you study, if you go to study composition, you may be only one of 5 or 6 other students in your year studying composition. So your classes are very small, which means you get a lot of time with the professors, which is fantastic. So obviously that is also the conservatoire route is for people who are thinking of pursuing music as as a professional career, and I think they would then also be thinking of how what they would do at the end of it. A lot of people go on to do postgraduate study, although by no means all. But the application itself, I think it is a different process, and it's a bit more involved, and the deadline is earlier. So I think it's one of those things. Just be aware of those things, because the sooner you start preparing, the better your application is going to be.
Great, thanks, Piers, and thanks, David, for that. So I just wanted to ask as well, just a little bit about the admissions process specifically at Ashbourne. Now, I'm sure many of you that are in the call at the moment will know that to gain a place onto the music program at Ashbourne, you will need to submit an audition. We'd normally ask for a 1 to 2 minute piece of you playing an instrument, but singing is also allowed as well. I don't know, Piers, whether you could sort of give maybe some tips for anyone looking to apply to Ashbourne for Music in terms of preparing their audition and making sure that it's of the standard that we're looking for. Oh
yeah, I think that's a very helpful question. I think as Chris was saying, I think that we're looking for around about 2 minutes or so of you performing. I wouldn't feel too bound by that. So if you come along and say, well, I've got this 5-minute piece of Bach that I'd really want to play the whole piece. Don't feel you have to cut it down. Or if you want to sing the whole of a Schubert song, sing the whole of the song. I think it's really it's a ballpark, definitely sort of a ballpark figure. Things that always help: send a score. I think for various reasons, it just gives me an idea of a little bit of how you're working, how you're practicing, how you're marking things up. I don't have a checklist of what good marking up and what bad marking up is, but it just gives me a slightly better view of you as a candidate. I think choose repertoire that is going to show you off. Choose repertoire that you love. And make sure it's take technically demanding music and that you really love and perform that, because you want to make yourself look good and sound good. So it sounds a little bit, perhaps a bit redundant, but I think it's always worth repeating. Nevertheless, I think other things in terms of the application process and the audition process at Ashbourne, I think it's fairly painless. I like to think it is. We do have a theory test, which I think is about 40 minutes long, which everybody sits, and that's really so that I've got an idea about really where you are. That's sort of pitched round about grade 5 theory level, but it's shorter than the grade 5 theory exam. I think other things, if you've got any other things that you want to send, so particularly compositions that you've done, whether it could be GCSE pieces or could be things that you've done in your own time, could be if you've written music for a video, for a short film, send us the YouTube link. I think send us stuff that you've done that's musical, that shows you're creative and that you take initiative. I think that would be my general advice. And then the last thing I'd say is send scores. We always need to see scores of things, and I think it's grade piece, ABRSM grade pieces, bits of Schumann, bits of Bach, whatever it is. If you want to play Scarlatti Sonata, play a Scarlatti Sonata and send us the score. It could be an IMSLP link if you use the Petrucci Music Library, which is free online. That's a great place for downloading scores and then sending them to us if it's difficult for you to do a scan or a photograph of pieces. Photographs from phones are great. So if you want to send us JPEGs or PDFs of scores, then do it that way. But yeah, I just say send scores, whether it's pieces that you've played or pieces you've written. It helps so much.
Great, thanks, Piers. Yeah, and I would clarify that obviously all of our admissions processes at the moment are taking place online. So as Piers says, we would absolutely accept footage of you playing your audition, but then any footage of you performing sort of in addition to that, just to sort of back up your application in that sense. Yeah, great. Okay, we don't have any other questions here for you guys. So thanks very much, Piers, and thank you, David, for a very informative webinar.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.